Hello there, everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing Lady Gaga's latest album, Joanne, which was released in this past October. I believe it was October 22nd of 2016. It is technically, I guess you would say, her fifth studio album, although again, it's a little tricky. I mean, is the Fame Monster its own album? Is it a part of the Fame? Do you count them as one album or two albums? Because then it would, I guess, technically be her fourth album if you combine them. But I don't think they're there. I kind of separate them out, and this is technically her fifth album. And boy, was it unexpected. I don't think anyone necessarily predicted that she would go in the direction that she went with this album, coming after what she was doing before that. And of course, there was also Cheek to Cheek, but though that's not really technically an album of hers, it's a duet album with Tony Bennett. Coming off of that, I will say that for me, Joanne, it's an album that at first was a little bit, at times I was like really into the idea, and then there were times where I was like, oh gosh, this is really not the Lady Gaga that I know we all have been waiting. It was at that point 3 years since Art Pop, and we were so ready for her return to pop music. And then Joanne, especially with the lead single, left me with a lot of reservations and concerns about where this album was heading. But then once we heard the whole album in October, I really did come fully around to it. I think that there are some truly amazing songs, and I think that her songwriting was really the element that was showcased on this record. It really allowed her to strip back and truly bare her soul in a way we haven't seen before. Maybe in small doses on previous records, and not in a completely honest and raw way like she is here. And of course, there's also a lot less vocal effects. There's a lot less, production, although there are a few songs that still employ that. There's just a lot more of a raw acoustic sit down feel to this record. And it's a perfect addition to an artist's catalog. Other artists have done albums like this in the past, like Madonna with her music album. It's very common for artists to go through this path and journey. And to call it country music, I definitely think would be inaccurate. Although this album is very diverse in terms of musical genre and inspiration, I think it goes in every single direction, actually, that you can imagine, which makes it a little hard to classify because it's not entirely pop music, although it still is. And it definitely does have country influences, but by no means is this a country album. So starting right ahead with this first track, Diamond Heart. This track is very brazen, and we see her getting the most growly and raspy kind of voice work we have never really heard from her before. It has a very throwback sort of Americana, but like a bit tinged with, hard classic rock feel that we would come to expect from, Gaga lists a lot of her influences, and she's always been a very big classic rock fan. This song has that sort of Bruce Springsteen push and drive that really soars in the chorus. It's not my favorite song by any means, but it's a powerful opener for the record. She's singing about how she's pretty much, so good inside, even though she's so rough around the edges, like we all are. And she talks about Americans in this song in a way that reminds me a little bit of Lana Del Rey when she's talking about, like wild young Americans running on the highway. It has that sort of feel, which you could attribute to sort of more of a country music vibe. So this song is like a rock song, but it has some country elements in it, in that it does feel very back road, very sort of like dirty and gritty. But it still has a flair to it that's a little bit theatrical and a little bit more kind of like a Lady Gaga song, which stands out from, some other songs that might be in a similar vein. I'm not a huge fan of classic rock, to be completely honest. It's not my thing. So to make Lady Gaga make me want to listen to this song means she's doing a pretty good job in winning me over here. The next track, Ayo, definitely goes the most like, okay, I'm going to try and be country for one song, because she uses all of these country instrumentals in the background, but she also kind of employs it in a very strange sort of electronic way. She turns country and makes it sound electronic, which is not an unusual or uncommon thing, but it's certainly not like, something that you hear a lot in country. This song, again, is employing similar kind of tropes of Marlboro cigarettes and people chain smoking and dancing in a dive bar. I mean, this song is perfect for her aesthetic of a dive bar tour, which she's going on with this album. And again, for me, it's not a highlight for me just because that's not my style and it's not my style of music. I'm also not a really huge country fan. So if you're pulling in two elements of country and classic rock, it's like, ooh, this is not necessarily going in my direction. But again, Lady Gaga wins me over. I do like the lyric "mirror on the ceiling" when you're dancing. I don't know, it reminds me of like some sort of poignant lyric that you would hear in like a Billy Joel song or something that just like kind of makes you think a little bit more about the lyrics than instead of just like, "Hey yo, I'm smoking them all." It's like, okay, this is a little bit cheesy in my opinion. But I mean, it's all right, I mean, Lady Gaga's always flirted that boundary for me with lyrics of being a little bit downright silly and ridiculous, but sometimes not, necessarily suffering for that. Sometimes the songs are meant to be cheeky and witty and a little bit over the top. And this song for me maybe does, the lyrics don't necessarily help it that much, but I do appreciate the dance and mirror on the ceiling lyric. It kind of adds another dimensionality to the song lyrics, otherwise it wouldn't have. But let's get into the third track, the title track on this album, which may be my absolute favorite. This song, Joanne, is so emotional and so weighted in terms of the subject matter. I mean, it's the title track, so it carries the theme of this album, which was inspired by her aunt who died of before she was even born. I think it was back in the 70s. This is her aunt, who was a lot older than her, obviously, and she always heard about her from her family. They talked a lot about how her young and free spirit was just so, and in the family, you hear about someone who's passed away before you were even born, and you sometimes might think, what if I could have had a conversation with them? Like, would we have been like two peas in a pod? And I think Lady Gaga, I mean, her middle name is Joanne. I think she is using this as sort of a way of kind of dealing with that. Like, I wish I could have spent time with her. I wish I could have. My family has talked so much about her and how wonderful she was, and how tragic it was she died so young, and how she just wishes she could have spent some time with her. And of course, she's talking about, death and passing into the beyond and what is really beyond. A very heavy subject matter. And she has a melancholy tune and melody that she's implying for this. And I definitely love how it does get hopeful and then melancholy in the same breath of the chorus. And she sort of builds and builds and adds just a little bit more instrumentation as she goes. And it feels very Joni Mitchell. And I'm definitely, definitely here for that because Joni Mitchell is one of my favorite, folk artists. And even maybe the closest you could get to jazz, that's because she definitely went in that direction that I could name. And this song feels so much like a Joni Mitchell tribute in some ways. And I think it's just such a beautiful and touching song that I feel so attracted and attached to, and that I feel like we all wanted to know Joanne, or we all can relate to this feeling of wanting to know a relative or someone we know even in our present lives who passed too soon or too young. Where do you think you're going? It has this sort of like yearning and desperation to it, and yet at the same time a sense of like, I'm going to make peace with this, I'm going to come to terms with this. And I think Lady Gaga really, really had to write this song. Another thing that, again, this will be apparent is, I mean, obviously this album is much more Stephanie Germanotta than it is Lady Gaga. She's writing this album for herself. She's not writing this album for the charts. She's not writing this album for the fan. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, it almost is entirely music that she wanted to make. And I do really respect her for that. I mean, she's at a stage in her career where she can do this. Do I necessarily want her to, personally go with this direction for the rest of her career? No. And I definitely do not think that she is. Although I definitely think there will always be this element to her music. And I totally appreciate that. Her music is so multidimensional. It's not just pop music with some big hit producer. It's like all over the spectrum. And her versatility is so unique in this day and age for an artist that we don't necessarily see very often. So I applaud her for that. The next track, or the next two tracks, are seeing her a little bit more return to form in terms of insane pop, psychedelia. In John Wayne, she's still employing some very country tropes. And when, of course, I saw the title John Wayne, I was like, oh boy, okay, so how country are we really going here on this album? But, actually for me, it's actually not a problem that the song is still very country tinged, because she's making it like a country bombastic dance song which is, not unheard of, but it's definitely unique in terms of country music. The sort of chorus, well, not instrumental, but the it's so funny to me. I don't know. It's like it just reminds you of a honky tonk bar, but in a good way. And I think that like it's danceable enough that you can kind of, if you're not a country lover, I know some people who like hate country will probably hate this song because it's just so like not only country sounding, but it's sort of like all about country vibes, riding on the back of a horse compared to riding on the back of a car and like all these things. And like, it's like a song for a honky tonk bar. But again, it's what it is. Now, I have to be honest though, it is kind of hilarious to me that Lady Gaga was born in New York and she's making such country sounding music because you'd think that someone who grew up in like Oklahoma or Texas would make music like this. And I don't know if she's necessarily spent a lot of time in, country sort of areas, but it's sort of funny that I don't think her family is very country. I mean, they're very Italian American New Yorkers, that she's adopting and embracing this sort of aesthetic. I mean, I guess she knows it's popular in this country, but at the same time, most of her fan base is LGBT, and country is not necessarily a LGBT fan favorite. So it's interesting that she's chosen to go this route for this record. I don't feel like she's just doing it because she's like, why don't I try country? I've tried a lot of other things. I think she really does feel an affinity for it, but she's never really talked about country music as being a huge, huge inspiration compared to classic rock or David Bowie or the Beatles, sort of more big, sort of theatrical rock pop music from the 60s and 70s and 80s. That being said, she did have the Born This Way Country Road version. Born This Way had country vibes, so it's not. We saw this coming, but yeah, John Wayne. It's not a highlight for me, but I appreciate the song. It's kind of fun to sing and listen to in the car. The music video is utterly insane, as you would expect for Lady Gaga. She brings that ostentatious, chaotic, sort of psychedelic nature to her performance style to that song, and it fits it well for that music video. The next track, Dancing in Circles, as most people know, is about masturbation, and it's not too subtle in its lyrics to describe that. It's actually quite different from the rest of this album, and that it sounds like something that she could have released from the Fame era. It has a similar sort of vocal approach in which she's sort of like talking in a little bit more of a hushed sound that she used a lot on the Fame and the Fame Monster, and it's in a little bit more of a general pop dance vibe instead of being country tinged or rock tinged. It's a very interesting production. It's a little all over the place, but I'm totally okay with it. At one point, it almost feels a little bit like exotic Indian music to me. I don't know why, but something about that production and that backing sort of, I don't know if it's an accordion or guitar that's going off and some distorted production, feels very kind of foreign and exotic. But it makes you kind of really get into the groove of, I guess, what we would consider masturbation. And then she uses tap down my boots, let me beat around. It's a very interesting sort of, I mean, the boots makes you think of country, but it's sort of all the interesting metaphors that she's employing in this lyrics make it very sexual for sure, which is definitely not territory Lady Gaga is foreign to. I mean, art pop was so sexual. So this song also plays to that aesthetic. So now we come to the lead single off of this album, and probably one of the more controversial tracks in my opinion for this record, called Perfect Illusion. I am going to be honest, guys, I really do not like this song, and I probably never will. It's just such a shame. I want to like it. I really do. But, oh, it's just so grating on the ears for me. And I've heard a lot of other people reviewing this album say that it's just, no matter how much of a Lady Gaga fan they are, they just cannot fully embrace this song. I do love the lyrics to it. I mean, I totally get the sort of desperation, wailing, sort of screeching, sort of looking for love and looking for hope and anger and angst that comes with it. It reminds me a little bit of Lily Allen with that sort of like, oh, F you, like, what was this that I was in here? I totally get that, but I mean, it's just so angsty, and it is, it's a Mark Ronson track. Not necessarily that that's a bad thing, but you can definitely tell that Mark Ronson was on this song and not so much on the others, because it's like just got such a different sort of heavy, I don't want to say heavy metal, but it's like heavy metal with electronic music instead of guitars. And it's just too heavy for me. It's just too brazen. It's just too screechy. Her voice is amazing, but it gets to the point where I just can't listen to it after very long, 'cause the song isn't too long, but it does go on long enough that by the time the 3rd chorus rolls around, you're just like, "Oh god," and then there's that key change, and that key change, honestly, to me, does not help the song at all. I feel like it just makes the song, like everything that was sort of like, about it just, like, gets amplified because suddenly the song's like, "Whoa," trying to become something even huger, and it is in some regards, it's becoming louder, but the key change does not help me, in my opinion. That's when I really cringed when I first heard this song. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is like a horrible song, but as far as songs that Lady Gaga has put out, it is just not a favorite of mine. That being said, I mean, I do think, again, it's really just the chorus. I think the buildup is like really energetic, and I could definitely get into that. It's just, especially after you come to the chorus the second time, you're just like, no, no, I can't listen to this anymore. Like, she's just screeching, it wasn't love, and I get that it wasn't love, but do we have to make this pain so raw? But again, if I have to say one thing, I do appreciate the fact that she is being so raw. She's being so unconventional in her approach to what she's done in the past with being very much, either, I don't want to say auto-tuned, but having vocal work done, production, post-production onto her voice. This is just pure belting into a microphone. The music video is so not a Lady Gaga music video. I mean, it's just her belting into a microphone in the middle of a desert at a concert. And again, my personal taste is, I mean, what I've come to expect from Lady Gaga is that that's a little too minimal for her, and I really would expect more. But again, artists are meant to experiment and to evolve and try new things. I understand that. It's not necessarily something I want to critique. But personally, yeah, Perfect Illusion could be a skippable song in my opinion. It's also very different from the rest of the album, which is why I was so relieved when it came out. I was very kind of concerned when I first heard Perfect Illusion about how this album was going to sound going through. The next track, Million Reasons, which was the second song we heard from this album and the second big single, got really huge, actually, surprisingly. I was not expecting this song to be as big as it was. It's a very simple song, but it is a powerful song, and it's the main ballad on this album, and it's got a bit of a country tone to it, but again, it's more of just like a singer-songwriter, like Joni Mitchell, just I'm singing at the piano, I'm bearing my pain. And after Perfect Illusion, you're just like, oh, and now the piano comes in and you're like, all right, all right. If we're gonna go like this, let's go this direction. Like, I'm here for this. I don't have much else to say about the song other than I was very surprised how popular it got. For Lady Gaga to put a song like that on mainstream radio is really amazing, actually, and it is a good sign that like real music and like real just chords and singing at the piano with minimal production, with none of this background craziness, is still really could make huge impact. And it's a simple, I don't want to say it's a simple theme. You're giving me a million reasons to stay, but I really want to leave because you're just not treating me right. It's such an endearing theme, and I mean, it definitely plays into, I think, the next song on the album, which is Sinner's Prayer, which is definitely, again, going back into a very country sort of, I'm marching down the mountainside, driving my love affair. I mean, this song kind of reminds me a little bit, and it's kind of interesting, of The Glass Castle and that story, that novel, which is going to be coming out into a movie really soon. I don't know why, but whenever I hear this song, I think about that family just in like West Virginia, like trying to keep themselves all together, but they're just like struggling. I don't know. I just had to share that. But Sinner's Prayer, I actually really love it. It's such a bouncy tune, and it feels really, it's a sad and sort of tragic lyric of, I am what I am, I'm messed up, our lives are messed up, like everything's falling apart. It breaks just like a knockoff from Fulton Street. I mean, I love that just slight allusion to, her New York, or, her just everyday life. It's very homely and domestic in that feel, and I appreciate that. And that's what something about this album is really appealing to me, is that, again, she's just talking about either it's her life or someone that she knew or something that she feels so strongly that's just like, this is life, like we're not always all the time really glamorous or very pretentious. We're kind of basic in a lot of ways. There's a bit of a Bible Belt feel to this song because she is talking about Sinner's Prayer, but as you know, religion has been an aspect in her music before, but she's using it in a time this way that does sometimes, I feel, disservice the music. Before, if she used Catholic references in her music, it felt like she was either parodying it, or it felt like it just needed to be there because she was making such an important statement about social justice or about love and relationships. In this response, I do kind of feel like this is a song that Loretta Lynn could have sung. And, when you consider Bible Belt like crooners who sing about their sinner's prayer, you're sort of like, okay, I don't want to necessarily have Lady Gaga turn into a Bible humper here. But I mean, I'm fine with the illusion. I'm just saying, like, it's a direction I'm a little worried she could go into, and that got me a little concerned at one point, but I have no problem with it. Again, it's just, it's all not something we expected from her at all. Like, I think we expected her to be a little bit more emotional and a little bit more real and stripped back, but not quite like this. But again, hearing the whole album, I'm okay with it. The next track, Come to Mama, complete shift of gears here. We are going to jazz, and we're going to a bit more again of like the Billy Joel sort of like rock and roll, but not quite rock and roll. I would say it's definitely more of a New York jazz tune, and it feels so enlivened, and it feels so impassioned like the Beatles were. And I really love this song for it. It didn't necessarily become like a huge popular song, but I could tell that when she was making it, like she had to. She just was like, this is my tribute song to all those great artists from the 60s, and I just have to make this. And she feels so strong and confident in her delivery and her vocal ability. She's got such good vocals in this song. Her vocals just slay everything. That's most the only thing I can say about it. It has some amazing abstract lyricism, which harkens back to the Beatles as well. She's not necessarily being so upfront with what she's talking about. She's dousing it in rich metaphors. It says, dude in a lab coat and a man of God fought over prisms and a 40-day flood. Like, that's like a really left field sort of, whoa, like, wait a minute, let me scratch my head and think about this sort of lyric. And I love that about this song because it definitely makes you realize that this is an anthem for people who are trying to come together. And again, it's like the peace movement. It's about coming together. Coming to Mama could signify coming to love, coming to the divine feminine, coming together as a humanity, and to Mother Earth. Or it could just be, come to Mama, like, come back home. And it's just such a beautiful, endearing sentiment that's expressed in this song, and the way it's delivered through the lyrics. A+ for me. One of my favorites on this album. And then we come to Hey Girl featuring Florence Welch, which was the song most anticipated for me because I am a humongous Florence Welch fan of Florence and the Machine. And when I heard, I could not literally believe that Lady Gaga and Florence Welch were doing a duet together. I was just like, this is not real life. Like, I love these worlds colliding. This needs to happen more in pop music. And oh my gosh, boy, did this song not disappoint. Now, at first listen, yes, this is very Benny and the Jets. I mean, there's just nothing else I can say. The synth background is just so there, and I'm totally okay with it. I'm actually not a really huge fan of Benny and the Jets. I don't know, maybe because I just always heard it at work, and it always reminds me of being at work. I don't know. The way their voices work together is just flawless. I mean, Florence has a little bit of a different, unique sound than Lady Gaga does, but the way their kind of matching voices harmonize is just so, like, I don't want to say Florence is a little bit more girly sounding, but she's a little bit more like a lady, and Lady Gaga's a little bit rougher, but it feels like it's still like a woman's empowerment song, and they feel like such, not just like women, but ladies, like singing this song, like ladies to be admired and to look up to. And they're really saying, like, let's stop all this drama and pettiness between women and competing and tearing each other down and bringing each other together, which in the music industry is a huge problem especially for females trying to come up in the pop scene. There's all of pitting against each other and chart competition and misogyny, and all of these things come into play, and this song was so needed. And to have two really iconic vocalists in pop music, or in the alternative music sphere, because Lady Gaga is definitely bridging into alternative here, to have them come together and make this song was very much what the doctor ordered. And so I am definitely here for this. This is definitely, like, probably my second favorite song after Joanne, the title track on this record. And definitely, despite what I wouldn't necessarily consider my style of music, it definitely makes me, like, so interested in just that style of music in general that they're trying to play homage to with this song. And so we come to the final track, Angel Down. Such a powerful, emotional, political, poignant track about so many different things going on. She references, where are our leaders? It's chaos, foolish and weaker. It's such a poignant song for what's going on. I know that she kind of was inspired by Trayvon Martin, who was shot down by police officers. So she talks about an angel down. And I mean, when you consider what's been going on in this country, particularly with Black lives being murdered by police officers, but of course also in just general people dying for whatever horrific reason, it's so horrible that another angel is down. And I just think the way she just used that lyric and that sentiment to bridge it all together was just such a excellent A+ idea for her to end this album with. And it definitely goes back a little bit more to her sort of David Bowie Beatles aspect. So it's like British rock. It's something you'd expect Elton John to sing. And of course, she's a huge Elton John fan. So, and to me, this song is like a huge tribute to Elton, and saying like, I can write songs just as good as you do. We know that, Lady Gaga. We know. We heard Speechless. We know you're really good at piano ballads and alt rock ballads as well. So in that regard, I mean, it's an amazing way to close the album, but the work tape that she does is almost even more powerful because it's a little bit more stripped back. And the way she just lets her voice get so raspy and like growly, it's like just like how real vocalists really use their voice. And she's putting herself right in that sort of vein of great, like Aretha and all of these sort of like, just like powerful women who use their voice that's like kind of deep and powerful in such a raspy and painful, but yet like full of emotion sort of way. And she really breaks that down in Angel Down work tape. Highly recommend listening to that as well. We have 2 bonus tracks on this album. One of them I really, really don't like, and the other one I really, really, really do love. The one I do not like is Grigio Girls. It is the one track I would skip on this album. I do love that the like song lyrics are very like down to earth, and she's singing about a good friend that she knew. But the song is too country for me, and it's a little bit too, I don't know, it's just not my style. And I mean, since it's a bonus track, I guess I feel like I can sort of get away with not listening to it since it's not on the standard. But I appreciate the song, but it's just not me. Just Another Day, though, oh goodness, boy, was this song powerful to listen to. You can't help but smile when you hear this song. I would love to listen to it when I was coming home from work because it had that feeling of like everything's gonna be okay. Like no matter what the heck is going on in your life, she's going back to Broadway. She's going back to jazz and the E Street Band in this song, and she's just saying like, look, I've been this singer from the beginning. This is like sounding like her early stuff that she used to do before she was signed to Island and then to Interscope Records. This is like her being like just her pure authentic jazzy sort of Brooklyn self. And I really appreciate that. And I really think it's an amazing song that kind of ties out the rest of the album. Definitely a highlight song that I recommend from this record. Grigio Girls, not for me. Sorry, not for me. But this song, A+. And I know a few people I said didn't really like this song, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the, like, song. Like, this is so an embodiment of her style. And so that brings me to wrapping up final conclusions on this record. Yes, it was not what we expected. I know that I was very kind of interested to see how this album was going to be received by her public, because I know that still her fan base, although she's now done Cheek to Cheek, and that she's been a little bit more, I mean, she's going to be in A Star Is Born, she's going to be a little bit more cinematic, she's going to be a little bit more watered down and stripped back. She did the performance at the Oscars 2 years ago for The Sound of Music, and we were all just like, this girl can sing, holy crap. But, a part of me cannot wait for what would be considered a return to form where, she's just making bomb-ass pop music, pop dance, house music. That was definitely her niche. It was definitely where she excelled on the charts. And I'm not really big into charts. I don't like it when artists make albums just for the charts. And I really appreciate, it's like I get Lady Gaga had to sacrifice some of that fame and popularity to make this record. She had to do it. She's got enough under her belt. But boy, am I curious to see where she goes next, because we have a very interesting position where she seems to be like kind of we are only about 8 or 9 months away from this record, and it feels like she's already sort of moving beyond it, which is a little unique. Though again, you have to remember art pop kind of got ruined because of her management and the fact that the Do What You Want music video never came out, and the the rest of the singles were just like kind of mashed into one music video, and then it felt very rushed, and it was sort of like art pop's done, let's move on. And unfortunately, it feels like that's a little bit happening with Joanne because she released the song The Cure in April. Very left field. No one was expecting any new music from her as she just released an album. She's just done the Super Bowl. She's going on a tour this year, actually very soon. And it's like, oh wow, and now she releases a song that is a complete 180 from what Joanne was in The Cure, which has me scratching my head thinking, okay, like, this is a little bit strange. Like, is she a little bit, like, done with Joanne? Like, does she want to move on? Is this kind of, like, saying that she felt like she just needed to get that out? I like it when artists leave space between their albums before the next one. I love how Born This Way had such a broad sweep of, like, a year of singles before she even started working on art pop. And I feel like with Art Pop and Joanne, she's just so succinctly ending these eras. I mean, we need a Sinner's Prayer music video, or we need a Dancing in Circles music video, or an Angel Down music video, or a Joanne music video. That would be amazing. But we're probably never going to get it because she's already going on to a new song or a new album. And it's like, I mean, I'm all here for it, but like, slow down, girl. Like, you've got a tour you're going on. Like, let Joanne breathe. So that's just a minor thing. I just found, I was just like, I didn't feel like it was time for Lady Gaga to release new music. And obviously, it's been several months and we haven't gotten a music video for The Cure. There's really been no info dropped alongside it. Is it a one-off song? Are we getting an EP like some are rumoring coming up? I really doubt it because she's so busy right now. People are saying, she's working on new music. She's going to release Art Pop Part 2 in like a few months. I'm like, girl, no, she's going on a world tour, and not to mention she just lost a best friend of hers, Sonia, from cancer, and that really devastated her a few months ago. So I really don't think that it's like the people who are saying Beyonce is going to release like new music in the next month. I'm like, she's just been pregnant for 9 months and now she's taking care of kids. She's not releasing music anytime soon. I'm sorry. Like, you gotta wait. You gotta be patient. So anyway, I just had to go on that minor rant. I always make these reviews super long. I should have just stopped it at 20 minutes, like, but I had to keep going because I just do. But I had a lot to say about this change in style for Lady Gaga. And yeah, I mean, when I heard Perfect Illusion, I was very concerned. I was genuinely worried that Lady Gaga was like done and that we weren't going to get that same theatrical, you know, flamboyant, feminine glamour cheek that we were liking before. And that had such a tongue-in-cheek to it, that it's such a wit and such an intellectual essence to. Not that this album isn't intellectual, it's definitely intellectual, but it's very left field for her. But I applaud her for that. The album did very well and got very well received, and it's definitely giving her a place for the older generation to appreciate her as a vocalist and as a songwriter. It's putting her in a league of artists that she really should be on league with, and for that I respect it. But it will be interesting to see where she goes after Joanne. And that is my review. I definitely plan on reviewing Art Pop as well as Born This Way. I may even do The Fame and the Fame Monster. We'll see. But I definitely have a lot to say about those two albums, so stay tuned for those reviews coming in the next few months. And I will continue to do these more reviews. I'm really enjoying it. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about Joanne. Any little monsters out there. And if you were let down a little bit by the beginning of it, but then it kind of grew on you like it has for me. So look forward to reading the comments, and thanks you and have a wonderful day. Bye.